Hey, what's up, guys? Back here with another video. And this video is going to be the third part in the series, but it's the second lesson. And this lesson is going to be about focus. And I've been getting, so in the last video, the comments that I got about recommendations and tips, a lot of people asked for how do you focus on what you need to improve on and stuff like that. And it really depends on what you're trying to do. But I think one concept that you should always start with that will help you improve in whatever area in art you're working on is composition and understanding shapes, right? When I started drawing, I would just draw whatever on regular pieces of computer paper, right? Like those white sheets you print on. And I didn't really give it much thought. Like I would just draw something anywhere, and there would be the occasion where I would just, when I'm done drawing, let's say that's the paper, like I draw something really cool here, right? And I was done with it, and I would render it in fully and everything, and I'll be like, wow, I want to add a background, and then I'll add a background, and that would ruin the whole drawing. And that's when I would come to the realization where it doesn't matter if you have a really good particular part of the drawing. If you add in stuff that also sucks, it's gonna make the whole thing look bad. It's gonna make whoever look at it be like, wow, you ruined the drawing with this. They won't even compliment whatever was drawn well. They would say you ruined it with whatever you added to it. Which kind of like goes back to like you got to take away from something to make it better. Kind of like you minimalize the distractions to make something look good. And I remember that was some advice I also got, was to minimalize what I'm doing. Don't add too much clutter. That's also another thing. But my point is, it's really about composition, right? Breaking it down, making sure your message is clear, right? Things like anatomy, perspective, color, line weights, all that stuff matters. But at the end of the day, if the shapes and the composition is off and you didn't plan stuff correctly, it's going to look bad. And so you need structure. You need some form of understanding when you're laying down things on paper. You have to know what's going on and things like that. So I would say when you start off, you got to like just explore for a long time. You got to just draw a lot and keep repeating. And through that, you're gonna learn a lot of stuff, right? You're gonna be exposed to many different things. Draw many different things. Don't just focus on one thing. If you actually want to be a well-rounded artist, but if you just want to draw cats, right? You can just draw cats all day, no problem. Like if you enjoy that, just stick to it, right? But I'm talking about here, like if you want to improve in all aspects, right? You want to learn how to draw everything. You could kind of retain a visual memory in your head and be able to pull from that whenever you want. You're gonna have to draw, sketch everything you can see and draw as much stuff as possible and be exposed to many different things throughout your life, right? Because like there's a lot of like really good writers, like I think it was Ernest Hemingway that said to be a good writer you have to live, right? I think it was him that said that. He probably said something close to that. I mean, the guy was a lunatic. If somebody disagreed with him, he'd challenge him to boxing matches. But yeah, you gotta live your life, right? You gotta do stuff. You gotta be exposed to different things. Like if you've never seen a dog, you'll probably never know how to draw it, right? I mean, we're lucky today we got computers and stuff and we can just search up whatever. But you have to be able to experience things, right? You got to be able to see things and recognize them and know what their main shapes are and stuff like that, and just convey that on the paper in the simplest of form, and that will help a lot. So in terms of focusing, in the beginning you're going to lack focus and you're going to just try to draw as much as possible, and throughout all this trying and practice, you're gonna practice your just like sketching skills, like how to use the tools, right? So you're gonna have the tools, you're gonna have anatomy, right? Gestures and forms or figures or whatever. Excuse me if like the terminology isn't 100% correct, because I've never studied this stuff in school. It's just all through experience. And so I might phrase things incorrectly. I might, but if you listen through, you're gonna know exactly what I'm talking about. So you're gonna have tools, anatomy, gestures, and figures, right? and perspective. And then putting all that together, composition. So it's very hard to just practice one of these things at a time, because you'll just have to use, you're going to have to incorporate another thing. So if you're going to be practicing tools, what exactly are you drawing with the tools, and how are you going to know you're using the tools correctly if you don't have an objective marker to see if you're using the tool right? So if you're drawing faces, right? I mean, if you're going to be practicing a pencil and you want to know how to draw shadows on a face correctly, and see if you're using the pencil to draw those shadows correctly. You understand? So you have to make sure to be able to use the tools and you're using them correctly. You're going to have to objectively draw something and see if you're doing it correct with the tool to see if you're using the tool right. For anatomy and gestures, right? You're never going to know how to draw anatomy fully and gestures and figures if you don't know perspective, because perspective helps you imagine these figures in space. You can't draw stuff in space without perspective. It's very difficult. You're always going to have a 2D, really, really flat, cartoony anatomy, or even very stiff. You can have cartoony anatomy that's not stiff and not use perspective, but you're still going to have to understand perspective to kind of be able to visualize. Now, composition is putting everything together, really, right? The figures and the perspective of the environment and all that, all of it has to match, but it has to be pleasing to the eye when it's laid down on paper. And so this is where it gets difficult. How do you combine all these things and end up with a good drawing? And even if you want to focus on color, so let's just put color here. But here we're just really focusing on drawing first. Now, in my opinion, one thing that's very simple is to just, of course, it's, to do studies, right? So one way to practice all this, studies, right? But how are you going to do these studies? Who are you going to study from? All the answers are out there, right? You can search up the most famous artists of the last 100 years, right? That have worked in pop art, comics, illustration, and stuff like that, right? I would say a master of composition and really amazing gestures is a guy like, what's his name? Mucha. Was it Alphonse Mucha? Let me search it up. But I studied him for a while. How did I forget the name? But that guy, right? He was able to frame figures within really, really great composition. And if you search up his art, you'll be able to see that. So guys like Alphonse Mucha, guys like is it Drew Struzan? He made really amazing. He made a lot of the movie posters for Star Wars and Indiana Jones, stuff for George Lucas. A lot of movies during the 80s and 90s, right? And yeah, the guy's amazing. Guys like, you got to study guys like David Finch and Jim Lee if you're going to be going into comics, right? Guys like Tim Sale. Tim Sale's amazing in terms of simplicity. Like, his style was very simple, but it was very to the point, and you're able to really recognize what you're looking at. I kind of blank out. I should have made the list of names on the side, but you got to look into it and search it up. You could search up most experienced or master artists from the last 100 years and see what pops up and see what you like, right? You don't want to draw stuff you don't like, right? But you kind of have to of course, sometimes you're gonna have to study people that you don't really like their style as much, just to see how they do things, right? Because everybody does something in a special way if they reach a really high level. So you kind of just look at the stuff and you're gonna see how they put things together. And so when you do studies, you're gonna understand how all this stuff goes together, and you could break it down. So if you want to learn how to draw anatomy better, right? I wouldn't recommend Jim Lee for anatomy. He sometimes makes stuff up in terms of anatomy, but his figures and gestures are amazing. They're always energetic and powerful. But the reason why you don't see mistakes in anatomy, because everything matches so well. Like, sometimes you'll see the way Jim Lee draws certain muscles, and I borrow from this in my own art because I don't have time to be drawing perfect anatomy. You just for forearms, right? You kind of have like an arm like that, elbow here, like that. Just looks like a forearm if you just add the hand to it, right? And so, like, you could just add muscles to go in the same way. He does the same thing for hamstrings. So if you see the leg from the back, it's got these like striations that just go in the same direction, and it doesn't take away from like how a real arm looks like. It just kind of fits that pattern, right? So there's a lot of pattern in human anatomy and stuff like that. And perspective, right? You're gonna Perspective is very difficult to practice because you first start off with shapes, right? Everybody tells you draw those cubes, right? And then fit them to a vanishing point, right? And stuff like that. So there's a lot of perspective tutorials on YouTube. I recommend searching them up and learn from them. But you'll never understand how to use perspective fast, efficiently, and be able to use it well with the composition if you don't have a large body of work. You can't just get into it right away. And so this is why I recommend first studying it academically. So learn how to draw it, right, in a type of architecture style, right? Understand the basic rules of it, because you cannot bend the rules if you do not know the rules, right? So learn about 1-point perspective, 2-point, 3-point, and even that fish lens 4-point perspective. And then after that, you start to start drawing gestures and figures in it to understand how you can use perspective to transform the figure, how it's going to transform the figure, right? Because it's going to make it look different. It's going to distort some of it. It's going to make it look different in different poses. And then you can understand, like, if you master these two, you're going to be able to draw figures in whatever composition you want onto the paper, right? So let's say you have an idea, but it doesn't fit in a specific composition. You can transform that idea with the perspective, change it in 3D space. You have to be able to visualize it and draw it and plan it out. And then you could make it fit whatever composition you want. You understand? Like, you got to think about this, think about it and study it. I'm not going to do it here. It's going to take forever. But I hope you understand what I'm trying to say here. And if you've got a question about what I just said, specifically ask me in the comments and I'll try my best to answer it or make another video. Here is just a really big gist of just what you have to do, and kind of like the not the order, but like a process that I'm trying to figure out, because it's very difficult to give somebody a roadmap of how to improve an art. And the reason why is because when you're drawing, you're depicting some kind of reality in your art, right? And I'm not talking about abstract stuff here. I'm talking about objective drawing, right? You want to draw something and it has to be understood, and you want it to be understood. You have to be able to work together. All these things work together, right? From anatomy to the perspective to the figures, the composition, right? And at the end, the color, right? One thing that will help you with perspective and composition and color at the same time, so these three, is painting landscapes. And the reason is, it's going to sound funny, but if you watch a Bob Ross video, right, and the way he just lays out a landscape and it takes less than 20 minutes, you can do that. That's not a skill that is very difficult to obtain, right? I mean, I think drawing faces is harder than drawing Bob Ross style landscapes. The reason why is because the tools do most of the work, and the perspective and composition are pretty simple, right? And so doing a lot of those, like really quick ones, and even drawing landscapes is not too difficult to understand how to use the pencil, right? So it helps you use the tools, right? Something simple like landscapes, where it's easily recognizable shapes like trees, mountains, stuff like that. It's really just textures. And so it's textures and perspective, right? You're going to be able to learn textures and perspective through drawing and painting landscapes. Let's put drawing underneath it too. Drawing and painting landscapes, right? And so drawing and painting landscapes it teaches you a lot. Like, I remember there was a time period where I didn't really know how to draw environments that well, and so I started drawing and painting landscapes, and it gets you more familiar with the tools. You realize how much of the problem is the tools, right? And it's not that you don't have good tools, it's that you don't know how to use the basic tools like pencils and pens, right? Pencils and pens should not be too difficult to use, because you use them your whole life, but you use them wrong because you're using them just to write regular letters, right? And I mean, most of us have bad handwriting anyway. I mean, most of us don't even write in script anymore, so we don't know how to let a pencil flow and sit correctly while we write. So painting and drawing landscapes, and you do a lot of these because landscapes are easy to draw and you can do a lot of them pretty fast. And so drawing and painting a lot of landscapes and utilizing perspective and composition, right, will help you understand perspective faster and to visualize it in 3D space, right? To understand perspectives, compare like a size of a tree to another tree, understand the perspective rules, right? How to, project things. Like, let's say you have a horizon, right? And you got a person over here. Let's say his name is Bob, right? And you want to draw Bob over here, from here to here, right? Draw a line there and you could project Bob, right, just like that. And so you learn projection here. So that's one thing. And now you can learn things like this. You'll be able to draw like different types of landmarks. Like if you had a mountain here and you want to draw a mountain there, it'll be that big. And so you learn all these different things through perspective, these rules of manipulating 3D space and understanding how perspective helps you. It doesn't manipulate 3D space, but you understand how 3D space manipulates objects, right? Like how your eye sees things differently from different lengths. So if the tree is closer to you here, right, it should be that big over there. So yeah, you learn all this basic stuff. And now if you do really quick landscape drawings and paintings, you'll be able to master these two things to a pleasing degree, right? You'll be able to draw pleasing compositions because, you're going to be doing these pretty quick. So you'll be able to practice these two things quickly. Now, portraits won't teach you composition that well, I feel, because, you're always filling up the paper with a portrait. So portraits will just help you with face anatomy, right? So you could do a lot of those if you want to get better at faces. I remember the spiral notebook video that I did a while back. The one where you just do that method where you repetitively do something, right? But on sheet paper. So you'll be able to eliminate the cost problem, right? And you're able to do it on sheet paper, so you're not worried about wasting it, right? So if you're able to do many studies in one sitting, you'll be able to improve faster than a person who just does one study every sitting, right? And it also help you give you mileage on the tools you're using and things like that. And so you could do the speed practice method. I'll hopefully I remember to put a link in the video below to that video on how to practice faster. So it all is studies. That's the way you improve. There's no way around it. So studies and just having fun, right? Just drawing more. And just more experiences, experience new things, learn new things. You'll be able to understand more, right? Like if you're going to draw, let's say, firearms or something, and you want to know how to draw them, you're going to have to understand the parts, right? Search up like a blueprint for the kind of weapon you're drawing. Or if you want to learn how to draw different types of trees, you have to understand different types of trees, right? How the branches look, how the bark forms, stuff like that. Certain animals, how they move, right? So, a dog is going to move different than a cat. It's going to look different. Horses move different than lions. So all this stuff, you're going to have to understand it to be able to draw it. People, their faces move differently depending on their personality, right? Facial features are different. Not everybody's face looks the same. Like there's one thing about comic books that kind of annoy me, where some artists draw characters and they all look the same, except for like the facial hair, right? Like it's kind of cheating. And some comic book artists, they just draw everybody super handsome, and so it just looks funny. And you're not going to improve that way if you don't study artists that vary facial expressions. So try to do that. Like a guy that does it really well is Neil Adams. In terms of comics, I really like the way he drew faces back then for his time period. Trying to think of more artists. I blank out whenever I'm making videos because I don't really plan them out thoroughly. But yeah, you got to make sure that you study people that you want to be like, right? You can't just and you also got to study people that do it right. So yeah, you just got to make sure that you're focusing on these things, but together, right? You have to make sure that they're all working together, because if you study one on its own, if you study anatomy without perspective, you'll never be as good as you can in anatomy and figures and drawings. I mean, if you just study perspective alone, you'll never be able to utilize it if you don't know everything else. Like if you can't draw faces at all in a flat setting, and you try to draw a face in perspective, it's just going to look funny if you don't know how the correct proportions are, right? Because when you just study gestures and figures and you do landscapes, perspectives, and stuff like that, you're going to be able to proportionalize everything, right? You're going to be able to do it well if you do it often. The key is just to draw more. Just draw more from what you see, and you'll get better. That's really the key. Studies and drawing more. There's no way around it. But I'm just telling you that to be able to do it, you have to do all of them at the same time. You can't just go and draw figures, right, without perspective. You're going to eventually have to implement it, right? But when you're starting off first, you just have to understand how to see better, and then somehow do these things together from like the ways I explained before, and to study different artists. So for example, if I get an artist that I like to look at their work, right? An artist that I really like their style. I'll take a picture of theirs and I'll break it down. I'll break down the perspective. I'll look at the way he drew the figures, right? I could even look at the anatomy, right? I want to see the way the figures are balanced, right? You look at the way they balanced along with the perspective and the way they stand. What's the composition? What kind of shapes connect the subjects, right? Some people use that triangle composition, right, to really lay stuff around the page. They'll use sometimes a square composition to show some kind of like dominance or something. Circular compositions to kind of just show like a focus or kind of a like action-packed ones usually have a triangular composition. Square ones are rarer, I feel, than the circular and the triangle one. But yeah, just break stuff down. You'll be able to do it. I think I might already have another video on something like that. But yeah, you just have to make sure that you study enough and to really research, right? Don't forget the research part. Like, you're not just going to develop on your own, right? There's, thousands of years of human history in art, right? And if you just skip all of that, you're not going to be better than anything that came before you, right? It's already been done. So you have to study and draw more. That's the secret. That's not really a secret. But yeah, I hope you guys got something out of this video. If you got any questions or comments or suggestions, right, let me know in the video before. And I know I said something before in the video about certain question to a certain topic, but yeah, I hope I already forgot what that was. But make sure that you comment below about what you think about what I said and tell me if this helps out, and let me know. Thanks for watching.